So Korea is much in my heart. I think one of the things that I found entirely extraordinary when I went there was the way in which Koreans pray all through the night. I couldn't believe I was asked by another Pastor Lee and Mr. Kim, and I was asked to come and speak at 2:00 in the morning, and sure enough, I arrived at 2:00 in the morning, and there were hundreds of people there, and I couldn't get over it. And the fact that this prayer meeting had been going on for forever. This wasn't like it was one night of prayer. This was one continual, ongoing prayer movement that doesn't cease praying. They do have gatherings, but there are people praying all the time for Korea, for the reunification, for North Korea and South Korea to join, for us to see the gospel go into North Korea. For this we long. For this we long. Wouldn't that be amazing? It's actually quite hard as somebody... I want to speak humbly now because I've said I love Korea. And I love Korea with British eyes, with little knowledge. Although I pray for you and I love you, yes, but this is the nation I know. And what I find hard to understand is how you can have South Korea, which leads the world in modernity and brilliance and advancement, and then North Korea, which is entirely closed. And there's a land border. And so we have a duty, don't we, as Christians? We have a duty to pray into that, to speak into that. And for you that are Korean, for you that are here, your duty, your nation, your people, these people this is what the Lord places in your knowledge, in your blood, in your understanding. Because as has been so wonderfully said, the church is where we are home, and the church is global. But God, you are Korean. You are here today because you are Korean or love Korea specifically. And so arise to that task. In many ways, arise to the task of taking what you have. You're here also in London. You're here at this meeting. By the way, that's not a coincidence. God meant for you to be at this meeting. What is it that I can bring to you? Well, I can bring the warning to South Korea. Your modern South Korea. I believe that you can lead the world in technology, in good systems, but you will not lead the world unless you hold fast to faith. In the end, you will not lead the world unless you hold fast to faith. And the danger for South Korea is, will you follow the ruler of the air as you were singing? Or will you follow Christ who defeated death? You sang this. You sang powerfully, the war belongs to my God. Well, he's raging over Korea. And it's not just north and south. Because whilst the south looks like it's a place of freedom, whilst the south looks like it's advanced and Western, do you really want to be so Western? Or do you want to be really Christian? And do you want to show the West what it means to be Christian? And do you want to lead the East and the world because you follow Christ? You see, if the church in Korea is a church that prays all the time, I see that it does. If the church in Korea is a church with men and women that understand the times and take it seriously, then I believe that you will, I pray that you would hold fast and you will see North and South Korea united. But you know, it would not be good for Korea to go the way of the West and lose its soul. What good is it for a man to exchange his soul? But what good is it for a nation to exchange her soul? You see, God works. Personal salvation is really important. Of course. But if we think only in terms of the gospel impacting personal salvation, we shrink the gospel. Because the gospel shows us how to do marriage and family, so our home. The gospel shows us how to do community, church, extended family, the community that we live in, London. The church shows us how to do nations. Faithful nations under God are nations that thrive. Nations that do not follow Christ's purposes do not thrive. Thank you so much, Pastor Lee, for knowing me, for knowing my story, for telling my story of the 4-year-old who was put on a bus to go to Sunday school. And there, my first Sunday school teacher told me about Jesus. And I fell in love with Jesus there and then. And I can't remember a moment when I have not loved him. Aged 8, at home from, there's a picture of my family in the middle and my mum and when I was little as well. And this is my mum with my mum last summer. But the thing about this was that my parents were not Christians then, they are now, through us going to Sunday school. But when I was 8, at home from school with chicken pox, I watched a legal program on the television and I said to my mum, when I grow up, I'm going to be a barrister and I'm never going to change my mind. And I prayed every single night on my little basil brush carpet, every single night before I got into bed. God bless Mum, God bless Dad, God bless Sam the cat, amen. And dear Lord Jesus, if it is your will, please may I pass the 11 plus so that I can go to the grammar school. And I prayed every single night because I figured that the only way that a little girl like me had any chance of becoming a lawyer, I was born to an Italian immigrant. So I felt that, this was the 1980s, well, in fact, in the 1960s to 1970s, when I was praying that prayer, early 1970s, I'm old. And so I prayed it, and the Lord gave me the answer to my prayer, and I passed the 11 plus, and I went to the grammar school, and I was and I say this because I think that young Koreans greatly value education, don't you? Yes? And so I say this because I did. And I was serious about that. And as Pastor Lee said, I stood up at a missions conference taken there by the husband of my first Sunday school teacher who did the youth work. And there I said, Lord Jesus, I'll go wherever you have me go. I'll do whatever you have me do. But please, can I still be a barrister? So I went on and I studied law. I became a criminal family barrister. I was a barrister in the Inns of Court. I studied at the Inns of Court School of Law, then in the Inner Temple, where during my 20s, and I think quite a lot of you are in your 20s here, I was working as a criminal and family barrister. But it was, by the way, look here, we'll flip on this. This is, I was married to my husband in 1990. We've got 4 children. This one married at the end, and another one about to get married in 3 weeks' time. So that's a little bit more about but I am called to the bar in 1988. And at the time, when I was there being called to the bar in 1988, if you had ever told me at that time that I would spend my life as a barrister, because I wanted to be a Crown Court judge. I'd watched Crown Court, aged 8. I wanted to be a judge. That's what I wanted to be, a Crown Court judge. I wanted to do, that was my ambition. If you had ever told me that I would spend my life defending people who lost their jobs because they offered prayer, if you would ever tell me that this week in my office, 2 12-year-old girls came into the office who had their Bibles confiscated in an English school because in a PSHE lesson, in a sex and relationships education lesson, they're 12, they'd read a Bible verse out and they were called homophobic. If you had ever told me that could happen, I'd have said, impossible in the United Kingdom. We're a nation that's been anchored in Christian history, dating right back to the Magna Carta, the Great Law. We are steeped in Christian history. We believe in freedom of speech, freedom of conscience. Well, you have North Korea and South Korea. You have a closed community. You have a South Korea that has a very strong Christian influence. Can you imagine a South Korea where they confiscate a Bible? Can you imagine a South Korea where Pastor Lee would lose his job because he preaches faithfully on what it is to be married? That he would be prohibited from going into schools because someone heard his sermon online? Do you believe that could happen in well, first of all, do you know that it's happening in England? Yes. Is it happening in Korea? No. South Korea? No. Do you believe it could happen in South Korea? Yes. So, men and women of Korea, learn from the lesson of England, from the lesson of Great Britain, put it into your body, and say, what does the Lord have for me and who I am in this context for my life and for my mission and for what I am to say and to speak and to do for God's kingdom purposes? One of my friends, when I was a young lawyer, I say friend. I mean, it wasn't a friend. This was Lord Denning, who was the Master of the Rolls, perhaps the most famous lawyer of the 20th century. He was retired by the time I came to the bar, but he was president of the Lawyers Christian Fellowship, and I was pioneering a lot of the Lawyers Christian Fellowship work in London at the time. I was running events, outreach events. Mainly, I wanted lawyers to know Jesus, so I was running evangelistic events. I was in my 20s, lots of evangelistic zeal and energy. Come on, everybody, we need the Lord, we need lawyers to know Jesus. But this is what he said. It is, I suggest to you, a most significant thing that a judge could draw his principles of injustice from the Christian commandment of love. I do not know where else he is to find them. The common law of England has been molded for centuries by judges who've been brought up in the Christian faith. So the common law means the biblical faith. That's how we understood it. That's how judges, if you read all the judgments, the precedent-setting judgments in our Constitution, it's all found on the Christian faith. And that was just normal. And as I was in my 20s, I did, on top of my work at the bar, I gave 15 hours of my life, so hours in the evening and weekends, and sometimes I took time away from chambers to go and speak to go and raise up a next generation of young lawyers. And we would go and see Lord Denning once a quarter. And we would have fish and chips with Lord Denning, and he would talk to the students that I brought to him. So as I said, when I was a young lawyer, I was saying to Christian lawyers, surely we are to be the watchmen of the walls. I began to see that laws were moving away from our Christian principles and precepts. And what the lawyers were saying to me was this: Christian lawyers should apply the law, not make the law, because that's a lawyer's job. A lawyer's job is to apply law. And I said, but what if the law is bad? How can we apply bad law? And that's really what got Christian Concern started and the Christian Legal Centre started. Because I began to say we need to brief into Parliament around the laws. We're losing God's laws. As the Human Rights Act came in, which sounds good, and equality and diversity legislation came in. This all sounds kind, doesn't it? Anti-discrimination legislation. Inclusivity. Sounds kind? Sounds good? And what does that appeal to? Who's the author of equality and diversity? You know what? God is the author of equality and diversity in one way. Because in one way, the idea of being made in his image is the fact that we are all, every human being has absolute dignity, correct? However, what we have in human rights law is exactly that, this appeal to an idea that the sum of all knowledge is found in our common humanity, rather than a supreme lawgiver, a common law which is greater than our humanity, which comes from God. So that's where you begin to get, this is my right, this is your right, this is my truth, this is your truth. And you begin to get a divergence away from this idea of a common law. So at Christian Concern, we seek to speak and to influence into Parliament. We watch the laws that are coming through. Yesterday there was a debate in Parliament where we had briefed a number of members of the House of Lords to speak on a bill that it's a conversion therapy bill, to ban conversion therapy, which is essentially to ban helping people move away from unwanted sexual practices. So actually that would be a bad bill. So we were briefing into that. So that's something that we do. We challenge and we protect. We seek to speak into the media, and we mobilize and equip. Now, I've got a lot of information for you this afternoon. And so I'm going to be speaking quite fast, whizzing through a lot of slides. All of these slides that you can have, all right? So if you, in your pack, there's a Connect card, and Hannah will be at the back at the end. And there's and in that pack, you can connect with us, or you can use the QR code to sign up. And then we begin wonderfully to have a relationship with you. We also have a Wilberforce Academy. I know that Leora came to that, and that was absolutely amazing. Where again we take everyone away for a week, and we study what I'm about to present to you across a week, really, but really unpacking it. So if anybody's interested in that, please think about applying to that the academy, which takes place in the first week of September. Because we want to see a next generation. We want to see Christians mobilized in our nation to speak of Jesus Christ. We are an organization with 35 members of staff. We're based just around the corner from here in Wimpole Street. We have 8 full-time lawyers, a policy team, a communications team, an events team, a supporter team. So we are looking to serve the church. So we're not just lawyers. We're not just people that brief into Parliament. We're saying we want to serve the church in Korea by warning them of what's happened here. We want to raise up a next generation of men and women in public life who see the gospel, who see mission as speaking of Christ in public life. Whether you're a software engineer, a musician, a lawyer, a medic, a teacher, a mum at home, a missionary or a pastor, we say that you're kingdom builders. And we want to capture every sphere of life for Christ, understanding that it's all gospel. There is nothing out with the gospel. There is nothing that is not gospel. We orient the whole of our lives towards him or against him. We're either with him or against him. We're kingdom culture builders. We're building a culture. It's all gospel. Let's not shrink the gospel. So what is God's pattern for us? Well, let's start at the very beginning. Genesis 1, God made us. And he made us male and female, and he made us in his image. That's his pattern for us. And he says, be fruitful and multiply. He then tells us how to live. And he says, I'm the Lord your God, have no other gods but me. Do not make yourself a graven image. And it says, you shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the sin of the parents to the third and the fourth generations. I know that's hard to see right there, but we can. So just again, this idea that when we are a holy people, we see God's blessings. When we live under God's path, we see blessings. When we abandon him in our laws, in our lives, we're warned in Exodus right at the beginning. But who does this hurt? The second, the third, and it hurts in the end. A little baba like that, she's not hurt because she's got a mama that loves Jesus. But actually, what if her mama didn't know Jesus? And her mama's mama didn't know Jesus, and her mama's mama's mama didn't know Jesus? And what if the laws that were coming from your nation meant that nobody knew Jesus? And they called good bad and bad good? Who's to look after the little baba? Who's to tell her, precious little girl, you're made in the image of God. God has a plan and a purpose for you. And you are absolutely female. I can tell. Because of your pigtails and your, I can tell. You're not choosing your gender. I know that you're female. Well, if anyone had ever told me that right now I'd be fighting for the life of an 8-year-old who's convinced he's a little girl, Elsa from Frozen, really, that's how he likes to dress, and that I was fighting against puberty suppressants and a system, teachers and social services that says you're a girl when he's a boy, I'd have said that could not be possible. 8 years of age. Jesus is the only way. What happens when we fall into rebellion? Romans 1, we are given over to sinful desires of our hearts. We exchange the truth for God with a lie. We worship created things, and we exchange unnatural lusts. Men with men and women with women. Is that where we've gone in Britain? Do we see the rise of a whole LGBTQ agenda that is called good, that is celebrated in the language of equality and diversity and inclusivity? This is who I am. The identity is I am gay. God says, you are made in the image of God, male and female. God says there is a path of purity. God says, I love you and I died for you. God says he has a plan and a purpose for you. We suppress the truth about being made in his image. We exchange the truth for a lie at every level, in our culture, in our music culture, in our legal culture, in our government. We worship and serve it. We celebrate it. And then we approve and we practice it in law, so that when a little girl pulls out her Bible, we say, you go into isolation and you stay there for 3 days at school. And the parents are so scared they conform. Yes, that's England. It's not Russia, and it's not North Korea. Blessed is a nation whose God is the Lord. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their voice. If I profess, said Martin Luther, with the loudest voice and clearest exposition every portion of the word of God except precisely that little point which the world and the devil are at that moment attacking, I am not confessing Christ, however boldly I may be professing him. Where the battle rages, there the loyalty of the soldier is proved, and to be steady on all the battlefronts besides is mere flight and disgrace if he flinches at that point. So where is the battle raging in your culture? In our culture in Britain, where is the battle raging in South Korea and North Korea? Where is the battle raging? Where will you get distracted? These are real questions for you to be thinking about as the people who will be the leaders of business, government. You will be the leaders. You are the next generation. So where is the battle raging in your culture? Well, in Britain, and I'm going to suggest this is where you are in danger of heading in South Korea. And if you become what Britain is, what will you bring to North Korea? Christ holds all things together. The battle rages over the protection of life, the pattern for family, and the place of Jesus Christ. So the recent history, the Queen, 70 years ago she died. The coronation says, this is the coronation oath. We saw this with King Charles, didn't you? Will you to the utmost of your power maintain the laws of God and the true profession of the gospel? All this I promise to do, the king said. The coronation service, the Christian service, the common law was bigger than the king, was bigger than the Archbishop of Canterbury. Our gracious King, to keep your majesty ever mindful of the law and the gospel of God, the rule for the whole life and government of Christian princes, we present you with the Bible, the most valuable thing this world affords. This is wisdom. This is the royal law. These are the lively oracles of God. Well, what's happened since the Queen came to the throne? Well, in 1952, abortion and homosexual acts were illegal. Today they are legal. When the Queen came to the throne, 4.8% of babies were born outside of marriage. Today, 51% of babies are born outside of marriage. When the Queen came to the throne, there were 340,000 marriages with a population of 50 million. Today, with 67 million in our population, there are 213,000 marriages every year. When the Queen came to the throne, there were 34,000 divorces per year. Now it's 114,000 divorces per year. That's a massive social shift. The Prince William said a couple of weeks ago, he greatly admires and respects the church. He enjoys attending at Christmas and Easter, but, he doesn't feel any different to the average Briton. He's not digging faith. We need to pray. We need to pray for our future king. The cultural shift, wants to maybe make the coronation service less Christian. Judge Lord Denning, James Mumby, religion, this is 2013, in response to one of our Christian Legal Centre cases. Religion is no longer the business of judges. The courts should not try to be the guardians of morality because there is no longer one definition of right and wrong in the wake of the sexual revolution. Judges should now take people as they find them. Beliefs about matters such as sex outside of marriage or homosexuality held by the majority in the 1960s are as distant to modern Britons as ancient civilizations such as Nineveh and Babylon. So can you see the massive societal shift? So what the Cultural Revolution is kind of once upon a time, 1950s, you had this picture of, before the advent of the contraception pill, this idea that you had to keep sexual expression for marriage. This was something that people aspired to. They saw it as the bedrock of society. That's just what everybody did. Because that was the culture. Because it was set within a Christian framework. Even if people weren't personally Christian, this was the framework, the expectation that a culture set. Then with the contraception pill and post-war and finance and all of this stuff, some of this you've got in Seoul and again in Korea, because what you've got is you've got money and influence, and you had the pop culture coming in, contraception pills. Suddenly you could have sex without necessarily getting pregnant. Doesn't always work. And so you divorce sex from marriage, and then because sex is for procreation, God meant for us to have children, what suddenly happens is in a context where you have sex, get pregnant, there creates a need for what? For abortion. By the way, I was born in 1965. I was born to a 17-year-old mother, to an Italian father that was coming through Britain, intended to return to Italy. They didn't expect to get married, but they got married. Now I went to see them yesterday, Mum and Dad. The culture expected my parents to be married. There wasn't access to abortion. What are the chances, making no judgment on anything, my parents at all, what are the chances of an Andrea Minichiello being born to a 17-year-old mum and a 24-year-old dad who was kind of on a gap year? Culture, ideas have consequences. The culture sets an expectation. So, in 1967, for the first time in our law, it became possible under certain very limited circumstances in England to have an abortion. The mum's life needed to be at risk, or the physical and mental problems to her were greater if she continued with the pregnancies. 2 doctors would have to sign off on this. It was meant to be very rare indeed, because our law until that point, bear in mind this, it had thought abortion was, can you imagine this? Abortion is unthinkable until this point. By the way, because I'm going through a lot of material very fast, please can you understand, everyone, my heart is soft for you. This material is hard. People go through things. The statistics say that there may be women here who've had abortion. The Lord loves you. He forgives you. He restores you. He redeems you. It's the glory of the gospel. It's the glory of the gospel. The gospel is always hope. The gospel is always redemption. This is at a personal level and a community level and all of those things. But the material I'm presenting is hard. The first year that the abortion came in, 21,000 abortions, government statistics. By the year now, every year, we have 210,000 abortions per year. 600 abortions every day. 10 million abortions since the passing of the Act. That's 20% of South Korea's population, 15% of the entire UK population, the entire population of Seoul wiped out. Imagine that, just wiped out, Seoul wiped out. In fact, it's London wiped out, or it's London wiped out, or almost the total population of Busan, Incheon, and Daeju. Sorry for my pronunciation. South Korea has its history was complete. It was completely illegal. Then in 1973, it permitted abortion under limited circumstances. In 2012, a ban on abortion was upheld in the Supreme Court. Then in 2016, resistance to the abortion ban began to be organized. Protests against government policy. Reproductive technologies, that's the guise under which abortion comes in. And in 2019, the Supreme Court deemed abortion ban unconstitutional. And in 2020, during COVID, directed the National Assembly to legislate. And in 2021, abortion is fully decriminalized. This is in South Korea. The regulatory landscape is currently unclear. And I am very, very upset about this because I could see when I went first to Korea in 2015 and then 2017 that there was a strong resistance. And you were resisting very well. But very often the enemy tricks. And what you've got here is a trick. Through the courts, the court's job is to implement the law, not make the law, but the court, through a hard case, has forced the National Assembly to decriminalize abortion. Now you've seen those stats. That social revolution of the last half a century is very bloody indeed. It's a very bloody revolution. It's 10 million lives in this country. In North Korea, abortion has almost always been illegal. It was made legal in 1983, made illegal again in 1993. In 2015, contraception was banned in North Korea. Allegedly, forced abortions take place in North Korea. Can you see how confusing it is for you as well? This is a complex situation. But you have to take the warning of the West. And you have to make known, you have to speak, you have to be the people that will speak on behalf of the unborn child. 3 weeks, the heart's beating, the eye bulges, every organ is in place at 8 weeks, 10 weeks, little fingernails and toenails. It's not a clump of cells. And these are the most dangerous place for a child to be is in the mother's womb. And you have to save Korea. You have to save Korea from Britain, from what has happened in Britain. This is new legislation. So now you have to go in and resist. You have to fight for the sake of 10 million children. COVID, since the pandemic, remember we shut down the world, 7 million COVID deaths. With that's average age of death about 80, with COVID on the death certificate. 73 million abortions across the world every year. It's the greatest cause of death. So Jesus' people are life people. We're life people. And there cannot be gospel revolution. There cannot be truth if we are not protecting the most vulnerable human beings, which are the human beings in their mother's womb. And also protecting the mothers. If you create a culture that says abortion is good, that says sex outside of marriage is good, that abortion is good, it's nothing. It's your choice. Your choice, woman. As a woman, it's your choice. It's all about your body. What about the other body? Do you see how non-Western this sounds? You know, it's really Christian. But you walk upstairs, walk out onto that street, walk into your universities. You are a right-wing, homophobic, horrible lady who wants to lock up women. You hate women. Don't you, Andrea? You hate women. You want to take away their reproductive choices. No, I love women. I love women. I love women. And I'm the wonder of God and the wonder of reproduction. And the wonder of women understanding their worth and their dignity And that God's place for sexual expression, men and women, is within a lifelong union of marriage. And that's how God made it. And that's how we thrive and know exactly who we're meant to be. It's beautiful. I love women. That's what I want for women. And so what happens in the UK now, it's no longer to doctors. You can basically get pills by post through phoning up a doctor and having pills sent to you. And then you, essentially, these pills will abort your babies in your bathrooms. That's what's happened in the United Kingdom. So there's no longer, and then the doctor who tries to save babies finds himself, so the man who tries to reverse the consequences of taking an abortion pill is the doctor that comes under investigation, that gets reported by a pro-abortion doctor. He then gets reported to the General Medical Council, and they try to remove his license for saving babies. So this is probably the first doctor in UK history where they tried to remove his license to be a doctor because he is saving lives. You can no longer stand outside, pray outside an abortion clinic. They've created zones where you cannot stand, you cannot pray, you cannot speak. So now there are censorship zones in areas of London where you will be arrested. So Stephen Green was arrested outside an abortion clinic, outside the zone, for holding up a sign saying you were knit together in your mother's womb. So now the Bible was deemed the Bible was deemed antisocial behavior. This happened 3 weeks ago. The lawyer in the case this is the lawyer in the case from our Christian Legal Centre. She directed Mr. Phillips not to say the word abortion during his cross-examination of one of the doctors that worked in the abortion clinic. Don't use abortion to a person who does abortions. So what you then have, we've had in Parliament in January, we've basically had a move to totally decriminalise abortion. So basically, a woman can have an abortion up to birth, and no one should be criminalised for that. So basically, it's your body, it's your choice, and you can take the life of your baby up to birth, and there will be no criminal sanction for that at all. By the way, we have compassion for women in those. We should, by the way, what we need to be is the centres where we're looking after the women, we're looking after the children. That's what we need to do. Give alternate choices. Choose life and help. It's hard work. But we say the generation that killed its children will be killed by its children. So then you've got a massive push in Parliament now to decriminalise abortion. So you've got, during COVID, Matt Hancock said, you're not allowed to leave your house unless you want to go to Switzerland to kill yourself. So we've got bills in Parliament right now. That's because in Switzerland there is assisted suicide. In Parliament right now, there are 2 bills, private members' bills, to legalise assisted suicide. The problem with this is that we're seeing a weakening of laws that protect life. We've done a lot of end-of-life cases. This young boy, he was declared dead on the balance of probabilities by judges. Well, you can't be dead on the balance of probabilities. We then got him resurrected, and then the judge said it's in your best interest, it's in his best interest to die. Well, you start having these legal terms saying it's in the best interest of someone to die. What if I've got an elderly mother-in-law who has dementia, who can hardly move. Is it in her best interest to die? No. The beauty and grace and resilience that she has enhances our family. But what about if she weren't loved in a family? What if she were taking state resources? What if she had a large will? Let's just watch a little bit of this. These are parents who've just been told, they are consultant doctors, they've just been told, and I've listened to the recording, that their child was going to have life support removed. All right? There's some volume. I think so. No. Sorry, everyone. No volume. Let's see if I can move it on a bit. Can you see that they're being dragged? They become dragged from the daughter's bedside. He's being dragged, the father's being dragged along the floor. You would have heard the screaming of the mum and the screaming of the father being dragged. You can watch it on our website, being dragged from the bedside of their daughter at that time. Again, would you think that could happen in an English hospital? Yes or no? No. Parents who are dealing with this at the end of this is what they're finding. This was a 19-year-old girl who now you don't have a baby anymore, but you have a 19-year-old girl who's got mitochondrial disease, and she's at her bedside and she's saying, "Mum, don't leave me. I don't want to be sedated. I want to live. I want to feel my pain." We get help for her in another hospital elsewhere, and the judges say it's in her best interest to die. They say this 19-year-old is deluded because she wants to leave to access treatment elsewhere. So we get treatment for these people in other countries, in other places, and they are held in the hospital rooms by the state against the parents' wishes or against their wishes. In one case, we had an ambulance from Italy waiting at the end of a corridor, and the police, just like in that last video you saw, were guarding the room to stop because they thought that the person was going to be taken from the hospital bed. They wouldn't, because we can't. We've got to have an ambulance. But this is not North Korea. This is a country that says it's in your best interest to die. Don't you know? Well, there she is. Sadiqa said, "I want to die trying to live." They wouldn't allow her name to be known. They wouldn't allow the media to cover this. So we had to try and make it known. They said that she was delusional. She wasn't delusional. And the same with baby Indy. Everything holds together. Just so that's what I want to say, that this Genesis 1 idea, the gospel idea. So life, now marriage. I'm going to really whiz quickly. If you make 1967, abortion becomes legal. 1978, it becomes possible to create an embryo in a laboratory. All right, so that's because you have IVF. So this becomes possible. The first IVF baby, Louise Brown. The rules were you have to have a mum and a dad, and you have to have been infertile. That's 1978. 1990, for the first time, we now have laws, Human Fertilization and Embryology Act, which allows for the creation of embryos with the express purpose of experimenting upon them and then destroying them. So now we've moved to creating embryos and destroying them. 2004, we have a law that clones a human being, clones a human embryo. What's cloning? It's man making man in the image of man. You move to 2008, where you have animal-human hybrid embryos. This is the mixing of cow's eggs with human sperm. And then alongside all of this, you have the liberalization of laws around access to fertility treatments. So as time goes by, if you're a single person, you can access donor sperm or surrogacy. If you are a same-sex couple, you can access children by way of donor sperm or surrogacy. So in the midst of all of this, what you also have increasingly is we're seeing along this, because it all becomes possible, this kind of the beginning of the manipulation of the body. So you have Bruce to Caitlyn Jenner, Ellen to Ellen Page. So you kind of have this celebrity culture. Now here we have a captain in the army who becomes Jake, and an actress who becomes Hannah. And they then have a baby by surrogacy. You see that what you begin to have with the manipulation of the bodies and the ability to have children, to actually take it out of a Genesis 1 model, is you begin to have bodies that this is a male, and this is a female, and they've had a baby by surrogacy. This now becomes family. Because what you in fact get is the wholesale redefining of family in your laws. So marriage now is a man and a man, a woman and a woman, either cohabiting, civilly partnered, married, having children by way of reproductive technologies or naturally, or fostering and adoption. And all of these family models are entirely equivalent in law, equality and diversity and anti-discrimination laws. This is family. This is upheld and protected in law. And if you do not say that this is family, and this is equal, and this is good, you become the teacher that loses your job. You become the doctor that loses their job. You become the child that is put into isolation because you discriminate. You are discriminating against me because you will not accept me for who I am. You discriminate against me because you won't accept me for who I am. It's like you are racist. And you have Harisu. That's one of your well-known so what I've said, what you have is this whole situation whereby the whole of family and gender becomes redefined in law. These are our laws. And so you get to a place where, as I said on Friday, you're no longer even allowed in church. You could be criminalized for helping someone who came to you to say, I no longer want to live a homosexual lifestyle. Well, if you speak into that situation, your very speech could make you criminalized. The very speaking of it now could render you criminalized with and possible imprisonment. Alongside all of this, we have the rise in pornography and children accessing pornography. There's also a reality in our churches. So again, one of the things I want to say, very often in the culture, what you have is a situation whereby a lot of the cases are played out on the cult. You know, I told you where the culture is under attack, the spot where it's under attack. But actually, much more broadly, as people of God, we have to look at our own purity, how we are living under God, because we will be on silent if our lives are not pure. And if the church is full of pornography, then we will be on silent. So we've got to actually guard against this. And then what happens, and I'm saying to you in Korea, what's happening in Korea? Are the churches sounding a loud signal? You know, has the gay pride festivals, if they come into Seoul, well, are you, as the church in Korea, making big Jesus festivals, light festivals, life festivals in response. Our Archbishop of Canterbury said back in 2013, it was his first test as Archbishop of Canterbury in the church, it's clearly essential that stable and faithful same-sex relationships, should where those involved want it, be recognised and supported with as much dignity and the same legal effect as marriage. So when the church, and then this time last year, the church moved to bless same-sex marriages in church. So can you imagine churches in Korea saying that? Well, if they're currently quiet on this issue or think that it's not good for the gospel or that it might offend people in their congregations, it's a very short step before that becomes approval of same-sex blessings. That's the warning of the West. It's not that the Archbishop of Canterbury is particularly weak. He has a proper conversion story. It's just that when the pressure came, when the cultural pressure came, he did not withstand it. What good is it to forfeit your soul? We have liturgy in our churches to welcome a transgender person into their new sex. We have churches flying the rainbow flag. We have lecturers in Methodist evangelical colleges losing their jobs because of their tweets upholding marriage. In South Korea, the LGBT lobby has attempted to bring in a comprehensive non-discrimination bill 8 times. It's still, in South Korea, same-sex marriage is not legal, though some lawmakers have proposed changing this. Among Koreans, 41% favour same-sex marriage according to a poll, and 56% oppose it. So I think you have to understand, this is not just, do you understand that it's not just about human rights? It's about the wholesale redefining of your culture. It's about the redefining of family. It's actually about what then happened. So you've got South Korea's first ever same-sex marriage bill goes to Parliament. We've seen the resistance. And what you see there, our Conservative Prime Minister introduced same-sex marriage. This is our education department. I'm an LGBT champion, so who are the ones that suffer? Well, it's that little girl over there, the little baby over there. Because what this then becomes is government policy. So you then have this promoted in schools. So daddy's roommate, Asher's tango makes 3, Heather has 2 mummies. Mummy and mummy, daddy and daddy, king and king. My princess boy loves to dress and twirl. Daddy and daddy, king and king. Honeysuckle dresses, voices panting, doggies chanting. So the point about all of this is entirely normalized for our children as young as 2, 3, 4. This is a young girl that we helped who resisted and found herself. This is a teaching assistant who, because she posted on Facebook resistance to this in schools, she lost her job. Drag queens are in our libraries, drag queens are in, and school chaplains are out. Here is a Church of England minister who in a Church of England school, in a Church of England chapel, gave a Church of England sermon on the meaning of marriage, and he's lost his job. You can hear all of him on this. A mother that was concerned about the books in her school was told that she went in for a meeting with the school, and the teacher sat there with a T-shirt on saying, "Why be homophobic, transphobic, and bigoted when you can just keep quiet?" She went into the school, and that was what she was met with. Parents in a school, in a primary school, children as 6 and 7 were coming in the opposite sex. Their children were confused. She went to raise it with the school. She was called homophobic, transphobic by the education departments that were dealing with the school, unless they were prepared to accept the gender of the child. They removed their children from the school and have been homeschooling. So now 8 years later, we finally, through a judicial review, got the government to review their trans guidance. And they basically said that what happened to Nigel and Sally Rowe was wrong. So this is good news. So we stay in it for a long time with our clients. Yes? But here we have a Christian school, but we see even Christian schools get scared and yield to the rainbow flag when the government regulators come in. So you know this thing? Do what the regulator says. Do what the government says. The government is coming. You're going to fly the flag. Now, you know about that, don't you, in Korea? Do what the government says. That's North Korea, right? Do what the government says here is fly the flag or lose your accreditation. Fly the rainbow flag, approve of same-sex children, or you won't be able to foster. Approve of same-sex adoption, otherwise you will lose your role as a magistrate. Approve of homosexuality, or you are not fit to be a social worker, all our cases. Well done, girls, to a group of girls. One of them, a teacher, was identifying as a boy. The teacher was removed. He's had his teacher's license removed as a result of so-called misgendering a child. A doctor who refused to put on a medical certificate that a biological man was a woman, who said he would refuse, was not permitted a government job as a result of that. This is the medical doctor. Again, you can watch his video. Time doesn't permit me to say, but you can watch on our website. Political candidates removed from their jobs because of their manifesto promoting family and marriage. Licenses to therapeutic licenses removed because they want to help people move away from unwanted same-sex attraction. Plan to ban conversion practices. Barclays Bank removing bank accounts from organizations with whom they do not agree. And in the midst of all of this, what do you have? So when a nation hands itself over, you have another religion that understands itself very well. And you'll have seen this in the streets of London. This was in October, after the Gaza attack. And you had Muslim prayers out at dusk in front of Parliament. It was highly symbolic, right up to Trafalgar Square. If you'd ever told me that Jewish schools would close in Britain for fear of an Islamic attack, I'd have said impossible. That's happened in the last few months. The Islamic demographic is growing all the time. Muhammad is the number one name in our nation at this time in terms of birth. Churches are becoming mosques. Mosques are not like churches. They are law centers, they are life centers, they are schools. There's an all-encompassing way of living. And in fact, Sharia law trumps English law within the mosque. And the Quran is read in cathedral services. Iftar is broken in our churches. We've got Quranic Muslim prayers in Parliament. We've got people being arrested, Christians being arrested on the streets, and no arrests being made for incitement to violence on our streets over the whole Gaza conflict. We've got halal food in most of our chains. We've got Islamic fashion, the big Eid takeover. We've got the murder of an MP, which was for Islam. He was a pro-life MP, Christian MP. Sharia zones in London, Sharia councils, Qatari ownership of a lot of our London major sites, Harrods, the Shard's, Olympic Village, US Embassy, One Hyde Park, the Connaught. sex trafficking. In prisons, we've got Pastor Song. We know Pastor Song, don't we? Yes. We know him well. Removed from Brixton Prison after 20 years there. We've got Hatun Tash, who's a convert from Islam. She is her life. They've tried to take her life. And we run a safe haven project where we basically safe house. When I say when all the things, like we safe house people that have converted from Islam. Labour knows that it needs the Muslim vote. So it concedes a lot to Islam, and they make massive demands on the culture. So state schools become Islamic. Who are the teachers? Do Muslim teachers lose their jobs as a result of resisting an LGBT agenda? No. There's an almighty clash coming. Awake, arise, a church. That's why we are training up the next generation. Are you going to come? A lot of you are exactly the right demographic to come to our Wilberforce Academy in September. We need to continue to contend, so that's why it's important for us to make sure that street preachers are allowed to continue to preach and that we defend all of our cases. 1,000 case inquiries every year. Christianity brings respect for life, dignity for women, purification of sexual expression, the rise of science, the abolition of slavery, political and economic liberty, education for all, hospitals and hospices. I imagine a South Korea like that. I imagine South Korea joining North Korea with unreproducible social capital, unreproducible moral capital, unique spiritual capital. That's the Korea, the joined Korea that I envisage. I don't envisage a South Korea that goes the way of Britain. Awake, arise, Church of Korea. Be warned of where we are. By the way, I've not lost hope for England. And maybe some of you will stay in England. Maybe some of you are second generation and you're here. And if you are, brilliant. Because we hope for this nation too. We want a Christian vision, a Wilberforce vision, a global network of hope and excellence. We are the hospitals. We are the peacemakers. We are the life savers. We are the compassionate and caring, life-giving people. That's who we are. All of this information means that we literally pour out our life. We are pouring out our lives. That's what we do for the kingdom. So, there we are in Colombia. We've got books to equip you on all of this stuff. We want to go back with an empty suitcase. So do purchase our books. Wesley to Wilberforce to abolish slavery. The new slavery is abortion, right? Unless God has raised you up for this very thing, you will be worn out by the opposition of men and devils. But if God is for you, who can be against you? Are all of them together stronger than God? We sang about this at the beginning. Oh, be not weary of well-doing. Go on in the name of God and in the power of his might. We are God's dominion people. We are to bring the kingdom of heaven on earth today. It starts today. A shrunken gospel shrinks gospel ministry. It's the sanctification of our life, of our vocation. It starts today. It starts this minute. It's the sanctification of your vocation, which is kingdom building for the glory of God. It's about the gospelization of the whole of life. There is not 1 second that is out with his order. So come and stand with us and build a Christian culture. Let's do that now together. Do remember, we so want the vibrancy that is in this room. We so want to know you at Christian Concern. So do make sure that you connect with us. The sign-up sheet's in the middle of this or in your packs. Connect with us or just QR code it. Go to our website. Join with us in this journey. If you want these slides, sign the form so that give it to Hannah. We will get these slides to you this week. We are here for you. We're here to serve you. We want to know you. Awake, arise, church. the noise that was in this room is sufficient. Is sufficient. You know, where we are gathered, so the Lord will change things. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and I will heal their land. God bless you. Thank you so much for the invitation. God bless you.